welcome to Fruity Knitting. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Madeline, and this is episode 144. For new viewers, Fruity Knitting is a 90-minute program that brings you knitting inspiration from around the world, as well as some extra snippets of travel, history, and storytelling that we hope adds joy to your life and brings a smile to your face.
And we aim for our viewers to learn something new with every episode. And I'm particularly excited about this episode because it's especially educational. Our featured guest is a highly skilled knitter, crocheter and sewer who we recently interviewed during the Swiss Yarn Festival. Melanie Chalet is German, but she's living in Switzerland, and she's the creator of this magazine, the Valiant Tailoress. And this magazine combines knitting, crochet and sewing patterns to inspire its readers to create not just individual pieces, but complete outfits for themselves, which I think is a brilliant idea. And during the interview, we talk about a lot of different skills and techniques, some of which were really new to me, and I love learning new techniques. And Melanie really is a gem. She has a wealth of crafting knowledge. So I'm just so grateful that our paths crossed and that Madeline and I can share Melanie's work and her expertise with you as our viewers. So the interview is longer than usual because she's just got so much interesting stuff to share with us. So I've divided it into two parts. The first half is the shorter half, and it's coming up fairly soon. And the second half is full of really great knitting and crochet and sewing details and good techniques, and that's at the end of the program.
Yeah, you can see Mum get pretty excited during the interview about learning all these techniques. We also have done a lot of knitting, which we're keen to show you, and we have a great patron discount, or actually a few of them. And of course, we're going to give you an update on the Pura Vida knitting retreats.
So quite by coincidence, smocking has become the theme of this episode. So Melanie, our interview guest, talks about smocking, and she also demonstrates how to do smocking on knitting during the interview. And both Madeline and I are working on projects that use smocking, but with completely different techniques. So it's become our episode theme. If you're new to smocking, smocking is an embroidery technique used to gather fabric. So it was commonly used on cuffs, on bodices, around necklines before elastic was invented. And interestingly, it was developed in England during the Middle Ages, but mainly worn by labourers. It's difficult to imagine that because it looks so decorative, but it was actually used mainly by labourers. And the name comes from the word smock, which means a labourer's shirt. And actually, I can remember back at school, in primary school, and I think also in high school, we'd have to wear smocks over our school uniforms during art class so we wouldn't get paint on our school uniforms. And they were just a very big, basic, oversized shirt with elastic around the wrists and the neckline. So smocking was just a practical way to make garments more form-fitting and flexible because during the Middle Ages, especially for peasants, the garments were cut extremely simply, so just in the shape of a square or a rectangle, and then a little bit of smocking was added to give it some shape, so I suppose so it stayed on the body. Now, I've never smocked woven fabric before, but I do have a very beautiful example of smocked woven fabric to show you. This is Madeline's christening dress. So Madeline was 5 years old when she was baptised, and a good friend of ours, who's an amazing sewer, made this beautiful dress, including all the very beautiful smocking. So here, the fabric has been pleated and gathered together through the embroidery, which is also the decoration. So when you smock with woven fabric, it just takes a lot of time because the fabric must be painstakingly pleated and all the pleats have to be exactly even and ironed. And then the smocking holds the pleats in place. So what's really magical about knitting is that we can create and shape our fabric simultaneously. So we can knit a piece of fabric that already has pleats in it. For example, any type of ribbing is a form of pleating. And an easy ribbing to use is the knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, where the knit stitch creates a thin ridge or pleat that's evenly spaced. So then your embroidery or sewing will pinch the ribs together in an alternating high-low pattern, giving it the look of smocking. But you can also do smocking on a straight stockingette fabric, and that is just the same as a woven fabric. So therefore you can use it in similar ways, and you can use it to repair garments. So for example, if you've got sleeve cuffs that are sort of or loosened and sloppy, you can do some smocking as an afterthought on the just around the wrists to bring it in. Or the same thing if you've got a neckline that's kind of gaping too much or too loose, you could do some smocking right around it, or you can do small sections like just a little panel here at the front, or 2 panels lining on the shoulders, sort of like epaulettes. And that is decorative, but it's also functional because it's going to make the whole neckline a little bit tighter. Or if you have a very kind of oversized or boxy jumper that you want to put a little bit of waist shaping in, you can do that in various ways. You can do a tiny bit of smocking underneath the bust as bust darts, or little pieces at the side of the waistline, or you could even do some kind of rectangle shaped smocking and put it in the small of your back, just like you have a belt on a jacket. So there's endless creative ways that you can do smocking on your knitting as an afterthought. And I had not considered smocking my knitting until I interviewed Melanie Chalet. And I just happened to have the perfect project on my needles to do some spontaneous smocking. So over the last couple of months, actually the last couple of months have been the most stressful and busiest months that I think Madeline and I have had over the last 3 years, don't you reckon?
I'd say so, yeah.
So it all kind of started before April when we were preparing to go to Switzerland to cover the Swiss Yarn Festival. There's always a lot of work there, just preparing all of the little interviews that we do during the festival and then the big interviews that we do on either side of the festival. So that was a lot of work. And then simultaneously, we were actually upgrading our Fruity Knitting website, and we were building a completely new website for the Pura Vida retreats. And we were also learning a whole lot of new administration tasks. So we had a steep learning curve there. So it's been absolutely crazy couple of months. And I knew that during this time, I would have no time to knit. Or if I did, it would have to be something that was completely brainless, because I would not have had the energy to think about it. It would just have to be mechanical. So I picked a design that is probably the most simplest design I've knitted in decades. So here it is. It's called the April cardigan, and it's by Petite Knit. And I haven't knitted anything by Petite Knit before, but the month was April and the cardigan is called April, and the design was simple and plain, requiring no brain power, so it seemed like the perfect choice for my situation. So as you can see, it's just a simple, elegant cardigan with a V neckline, and it's worked top down. And I actually need a light springtime cardigan that's very versatile, so it's also a good practical choice for me. Now, during the interview, when Melanie first talks about adding smocking to your knitting as an afterthought, I immediately thought of my very simple plain April cardigan as being the perfect canvas to play around on. At that stage, I was still working on the body because it's knitted top down, so I hadn't got to the ribbing yet, but I could imagine some beautiful smocking decoration going on around the waist and also on the cuffs. But if you're going to add smocking to your knitting as an afterthought, you really do need to plan it well in advance and do a large swatch so that you can truly calculate how much the smocking is going to change your gauge and bring it in.
Isn't it easy enough to just kind of play around and then make it looser, cut it open, make it looser if it's too much?
Well, I don't know that it would take less time to do that.
Yeah,
I think it's better to do a swatch, and then you know how many stitches you've got to cast on, and then you do it. But I knew I had absolutely no time to be planning in advance and doing gauges. But during the interview, my ears pricked up again when Melanie said that with a 2x2 ribbing, there's a variation that you can use that actually doesn't change the gauge at all, or very, very minimally. And I think you might even be able to pick it in the interview when my eyes sort of widen and my brain is clicking over, and I think, wow, that's what I'm going to use. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Did actually happen quite a few times.
During the interview, yes, because she had lots of new things for me to see. So here's a picture of my 2x2 ribbing, which is knit 2, purl 2 in repetition. And I've used the smocking technique to sew together the 2 inner columns of knit stitches that are closest to each other. And as you can see in the photo of the back side, the ribbing looks quite normally spaced and not pulled together at all. So to start, you need to mark the knit columns that you want to sew together, as well as the rows that you want to work the smocking stitch on. And you can use sewing thread to do this. In my case, I decided to work a smocking stitch on every 5th row, and I think it's worth noting that the wider the gap between the rows, the less the fabric will be drawn in, making it more elastic. So in every way possible, I was trying not to change my gauge or make it smaller. So with the right side of your fabric facing, you work the smocking stitch horizontally over 2 rows, and I've already completed the smocking over the first 2 rows, and now I'm working on the second set of rows. And you can sew around the stitches 2 or 3 times to make the sew and stitch stand out as a feature. But I didn't do this because I was worried about sewing the stitches too tightly together and changing the width of the ribbing. So at every point I'm trying to make sure I'm not changing the gauge. You should also avoid pulling the tension on the thread at the back between the 2 rows too tightly, because that will shorten the length of the ribbing. So I've knitted the garment with one yellow silk thread held together with a cream mohair silk blend. And this gives it a heathered look, but I'm only using the yellow silk thread to do the actual smocking so that the smocking stitches will stand out a little bit more. But you could even use a completely contrasting colour for more variation. So here it is. Here's my finished waistband. Hopefully you can see it because everything that is light doesn't show up so well on the camera. But I'm super happy with it. So I've done it there and a little bit on the cuffs. Actually, I'll put it on to show you what it looks like.
It looks very cute. The embroidery, it is embroidery.
Yeah.
The smocking looks like a honeycomb.
It does.
Pattern,
yeah.
Which matches the yellow colour, so I like that. I actually want Mum to embroider a tiny little bumblebee or honeybee somewhere maybe on the back or on the sleeve that's sort of climbing out of the honeycomb.
So you can see it here. I think it looks really great. I'm really happy with it.
It's really
and
nice.
I've done half the length of the smocking that's on the waist on the sleeves, and I've made the sleeves 3/4 length. So I think it's going to be good. I'm very pleased that I've done it like this. I actually feel a little bit like a baby chick in this colour because it's sort of so soft and with a halo, and it's the exact colour of a baby chick, isn't it?
Maybe if you'd only used a yellow like this.
Yeah.
I'm quite glad you mixed it with white, to be honest.
Yeah, it gives it a lovely heathered effect.
Have you picked any buttons for it yet?
No, that might be hard. I think I'll just do as neutral as possible.
You could get eggshell.
So I want to show you this. This is where I learnt the technique from, all the details of the technique. This is also published by Melanie Chalet. So this one is in German, but it comes in English, and you can also get it as a PDF download. It's really good. I highly recommend it. If I just sort of flick through here, there's really great photos and charts that really help you to know what stitch you're actually joining to what stitch. And she shows you how to smock on a variety of different stitch patterns, from stocking stitch to different types of ribbing and even brioche.
So you can tell Mum's a fan.
Yeah, I am. And brioche is particularly good to smock on because, as we often know, brioche over time just stretches and stretches and stretches. So it's a good skill to be able to... And brioche is really just ribbing, essentially. So it makes sense that you can smock on brioche. So here's a picture of both my and Madeline's project together. And the basic pattern for both garments is a 2x2 ribbing. And they look really similar. But my smocking is done as an afterthought, and Madeline's is done while she's creating her fabric. So she's going to tell you about her technique now, and you can decide which method might suit you more.
Yeah, so this is the Jenny jacket, also by Petite Knit, and it's an oversized cardigan with an all-over smocking pattern, and it has 2 neckline options. I've opted for the V-neck version. I'm actually knitting this for my best friend Antonia, and Antonia has blonde hair with blue-green eyes, so I'm pretty sure she's a summer type, and that's why we picked this beautiful rose colour for her. This would not suit me, unfortunately, which is good because it means I'm not going to try and steal it at the end.
Yeah.
I'm using Knitting for Olive's soft silk mohair together with the Thun per Gunt by Sandness Garn. So this is also a bit of a fluffy cardigan. The cardigan is worked top down in one piece, and it's drop shouldered with German short rows at the back. And the short rows are there to create a gentle slope, which results in a better fit along the shoulders compared to the traditional drop shoulder, which is just a simple rectangle. So as Mum said, the all over pattern is also called smocking, but it's done as you knit the fabric and without a sewing needle. So basically this cardigan is an all over double rib, but every few rows you gather 6 stitches together and wrap them. And in my mind, the resulting fabric or pattern looks a little bit like rows and rows of chromosomes.
Yeah, especially when you stretch it out.
Yeah, I like it. Except for chromosomes, if you want to be very technically correct, have 2 long and 2 short arms. And here everything is symmetrical, so vertically and horizontally. Now, before starting this project, I had heard of smocking occasionally, and I'd seen CaMaRose's smock designs when we interviewed her last summer, but I didn't really know what smocking was. So before I started this project, I opened The Principles of Knitting, which is basically the Bible for knitters, written by June Hemmons Hyatt. And Mum's interviewed June back in episode 68. So June
it's a good
defines...
interview if you haven't seen it.
Yes.
She's a very interesting woman.
Also a good book.
Yes, it's a brilliant book.
Yeah. I think it's my favourite technique book. And I don't look at it enough. Anyway, back to the topic. So June defines smocking as an embroidery technique for decorative gathering. And so I asked myself, if smocking is a type of embroidery and embroidery requires a sewing needle, then is the technique that I'm using for this cardigan truly a smocking technique? So I went to the back index, and I found that aside from the traditional smocking technique, June also explains some knitting stitches, including wrapped stitches and couching stitches, that result in a similar looking fabric. So to be technically correct, because I can be a little bit nitpicky when it comes to these things, I'm using the horizontal couching stitch to create a fabric that looks like it's been smocked. And this is how the horizontal couching stitch works. Now for the Jenny jacket, I have to gather 6 stitches. So I need to insert the right needle between the 6th and the 7th stitch from near side to far side. Then I wrap my working yarn around the needle as if to knit and pull that loop back through to the near side. In the beginning this can be a little bit fiddly, but you'll get used to it quickly. After that, I slip this loop onto the left needle, and here the more tightly you pull your yarn, the more tightly your stitches will be gathered. Finally, I knit the loop together with my first stitch, and then I knit the remaining 5 stitches as normal. So I'm going to try it on for fun and see how long it is by now. I was just remarking to Mum that I think this works together because yellow and purple are contrast colours, but Mum says I look like I'm wearing mud.
They don't work together at all. I think they dull each other down and it's not looking great.
I feel very pretty.
You are pretty, darling, and it's a pretty top. It just doesn't go with this.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Anyway, so here you go. This is how much I've knitted so far. Although, I mean, our smocking doesn't look quite the same, but I would say it looks similar. But even so, I had thought that smocking as you knit the fabric would be faster and less fiddly. But actually it turns out I take a long time for these smocking rows, and Mum didn't take a long time at all. So now I'm thinking that Mum's technique is a lot better if you want to go through the technique quickly.
I was really surprised how fast this is. The most tedious thing is, first of all, marking what stitches that you're going to do, and you do that with sewing thread. That was that part I didn't enjoy, but everything else was really enjoyable and really fast.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't know, is it fast to do a full cardigan with this like sewing technique for smocking?
I actually think it would be.
Yeah.
I think the difficulty is making sure that you've got the gauge correct in your swatch so that your calculations of how many stitches you've got on the needles is exactly right.
Yeah, well, I actually had some difficulty measuring my gauge in the beginning. I probably still would if I attempted it. I've given up.
So because of when you're measuring the gauge...
That's right, yeah. When you're measuring the gauge, every few rows you've got these gathering stitches that pull the fabric together, and you're not quite sure how far it should be stretched when you block it to get an accurate measurement. So that's why it's important to make a larger swatch to get an accurate measurement.
But even so, when you first started to knit, we measured it and we thought, oh no, we're going to have to do a smaller size. It's way, way too big. But then I said, okay, no, try this. Try just gradually
gathering stitches.
making the gathering stitches tighter and tighter just over the next section. So she did that, and then she measured it again, and she thought, oh no, it's going to be too small. So she just alternated between changing how tightly she was pulling the gathering stitches, which you can do quite a lot. But in the end,
notice it.
you can't notice it.
And I measured it recently, and now the gauge seems fine again. So yeah. But just talking about gauge, when I knitted my swatch, originally I found that my gauge was too tight, so I decided to knit size M, even though Antonia is a size S, and I think that was still a good decision so far. It looks a bit tight on the bottom, but that's just because it's on the needle, so it will be looser.
And also, once you've blocked it, it's going to get wider and shorter, isn't it?
That's true. So I'm not concerned anymore about it being too small. And Antonia is smaller than me.
Yeah.
Yes. So also you can, like Mum said, influence your gauge a fair bit simply by how tightly you pull those smocking stitches, or in my case, the couching stitches. And I am enjoying this cardigan overall, but mostly because I'm excited for Antonia to wear it. I've been wanting to make her something for ages. And this couching stitch is nice, but I do prefer making full garments with colour work or lace or cables, and repeating a couching stitch over and over and over again can get a little bit boring. And I think I've done about 640 couching stitches by now, and I've got way more to go. So
you're like Dad. He would always count. He would figure out how many stitches he'd knitted, how many thousands of times he'd done something.
I did a very rough calculation, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I do think the end result will look very pretty. So no matter how many couching stitches I have to go through, it will look beautiful and be worth it.
Okay, so now it's time for part one of our interview with Melanie Chalet, who is the author or the creator of the Valiant Tailoress. Welcome to Fruity Knitting. I'm here with Melanie Chalet. Melanie is a skilled knitter, crocheter and sewer who's teaching here during the Swiss Yarn Festival. And Melanie is also the creator of the magazine, The Valiant Tailoress, which combines knitting, crochet and sewing patterns to inspire its readers to create not just individual pieces, but complete outfits for themselves. And I think this is a great topic to have on Fruity Knitting because there is a lot of crossover between the three crafts, and many of our viewers can at least do the basics in the three crafts. So it's really great to have you on Fruity Knitting.
Well, it is my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Andrea and Madeline. And thank you for the very nice introduction.
So tell us a bit about your background and then what sparked your interest in starting a craft magazine and how did you make it happen?
Yes. So I grew up in a small German village near the town Hamelin. And it's the Piper's town, by the way. And during my childhood, I was always surrounded by craft because the women in my family are all very skilled sewers, knitters and crocheters. So this was always around me. And when my grandparents had fled the eastern part of Germany in 1949, and my grandmother really left with literally just a suitcase in her hand. And when she arrived, she started her new life out of that suitcase. So money was really scarce when my mother and her little sister were small children. And sewing was just a necessity to make ends meet. And when my aunt and my mother grew up, they just kept on doing it. And my mother really sewed all her clothes, or almost all her clothes, and the clothes for my brother and me when we were children. And then I just got into it quite naturally. I picked up knitting and crochet, and my mother taught me how to sew when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And sewing back then was a bit different. So my aunt had a border subscription, the magazine, and it was passed around like in
Between
three
the
families.
families,
Yeah, between
yeah.
the families, and everyone sewed from the same issue. And then after a while, the paper was really cracked, and from all the tracing with the tracing wheel, it almost fell apart. And, at that time, things like making a toile or muslin like we do today was really unheard of. So they would have regarded that as a waste of time and money. They just
And material.
fitted it, and material as
Yes.
well. They just fitted it on the go with needles.
Yeah.
And like when we were children, we were standing, Mama. Yeah.
I know, same with me. My mother did that too.
Yeah.
I remember lots and lots of pins in me.
Yeah,
quickly.
and we always got pricked. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so when I was then 14, I got my own sewing machine for my confirmation. And so during my teenage years, I knitted and I sewed a lot. But then when I started university, it kind of just stopped. And I didn't do it for many years. And then, at some time, I always had the Vogue magazine, the fashion magazine, and all, there are nice clothes and there are nice accessories, but of course too expensive. So I wanted to make them. And I started again. And then I discovered the Rowan magazine and I started to design for myself. And when looking on my things, on my projects, I thought, what goes well for me really is when I have designed something that goes especially with a dress that I already have in my closet or so. And I thought, I should coordinate my crafts better.
Yes.
And then I thought there should be a magazine for this that creates outfits or that shows outfits. And I told my husband about this idea and he said, oh, brilliant, do it. And so I just started. I put out an open submission call and I received luckily enough entries to start a collection. And what I received were mainly, in the end, knitted patterns and crochet patterns. So someone had to do the sewing patterns, and then I did that.
That is really, really interesting. And first of all, I just have to say, I love your blouse.
Oh, thank you very much.
And you
Andrea.
probably made it, right?
Oh, no, sorry.
You did it.
This is cheating.
But I'm sure you can, but it is stunning. It is. It's
Thank
really,
you.
really stunning.
Yeah.
So what you were saying is that the outfits you ended up wearing the most were the ones that you'd particularly made in mind to think, okay, I'm going to make this knitted top or crochet top to go with this dress or this skirt that I've made.
Yes.
And then you wore everything a lot more.
Yes, that's right. Otherwise, I would make a pullover and then always wear jeans.
Yes.
Or if we were invited to go somewhere, of course, you want to show off the things you make. And then you stand in front of your cupboard and think, well, I've sewn, I've knit, and I have nothing to wear. Yeah, I wanted to change that. Yeah.
That's such a really good idea. I think a lot of us knitters feel the same thing. We've knitted beautiful individual pieces, but we don't always have the option to wear them because of what they need to go with.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I think the viewers are dying to have a closer look at the magazine.
Okay.
So can you give us a quick rundown of how the magazine is put together?
Yes, of course. So the magazine is made up of two parts. It's one part is like a coffee table book and the other part is a workbook, really. And so the first part is an editorial part that you would know from other fashion magazines. And it does show the outfits together in pictures. And you always have a little text accompanying it that tells about the inspiration of the designers behind the designs. And you really get quite a few pictures to see all the details of the designs.
Yeah, beautiful. So, I love those shoes.
Yeah. The photographer brought them along and the stylist.
They're stunning.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, they're quite cool.
Okay, and you've got some good stickies here to show us. So what comes next?
The editorial part has also articles. For example, we visited a lady in the Black Forest who is one of two remaining craftswomen who still make the iconic Black Forest pom-pom hats by hand. And actually the pom-poms are made of real wool. They have to be made of real wool.
That's amazing. And a beautiful photo too.
Yeah, she has had a beautiful old farm, really. And she showed us her process, how she is doing this, and also told us a lot about the history of these hats. It was really, really quite interesting.
Yeah, that's stunning.
I think that's that.
Yes, okay. And what else? Yeah.
Some more articles. Then we visited Isabel Kreber in her home. Yeah. And, she showed us some of her designs and she talked about her background, how she became a designer and also what is important for her in her design process. So I think
this really is
for aspiring designers, I think it's really interesting to read
and this
about
is very beautiful. The layout, this part is very much like a coffee table book.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that it does.
Beautiful photos and lovely. Okay.
Then we visit. No, we didn't visit. We have an article about two young ladies who have founded a company to make sustainable yarn from dog's undercoat hair, actually to replace cashmere. So it really must be a very soft cashmere-like yarn. And they tell about how they founded their company and a little bit about the techniques behind producing the yarn. And finally, there's an article about the German hand dyer Fiber Passion. She uses really, really luxurious, high-quality yarn to put her beautiful colors on.
Yes.
And I think
Gorgeous.
she has beautiful blue tones, green tones.
This is a stunning book. Stunning book.
Thank you very much. And that is her. That's Andrea Hayden.
Great.
Yeah.
And then at the back, you've got the hard work.
Yeah,
bits.
the hard work. That's now okay. The workbook part. It starts with an illustrated tutorial of how to line a sleeveless dress or a sleeveless top, and it shows 3 methods of how to do it. And you have really all the illustrations so that you can follow along.
It's lovely. Yeah. Okay.
And then the designers are introduced in short biographies with a photo. And then the instructions starts. And it starts with the sewing instructions. So you get a schematic, the finished measurements of how you put everything together, the layout planning, and just to help you actually make the thing.
It looks beautiful. It looks like there's a lot of details.
It is
really stunning.
It is a lot of detail, really. Yeah,
and you'll learn a lot of little tricks and things.
I think so. Yes, we have special techniques. They are all explained, and I think it's quite detailed. So we took care to not shorten the patterns for space or so. We really kept them quite lengthy.
Okay, that's great.
And then follow the knitting patterns and the crochet patterns, and that's the same. So you get the construction and what materials and needles and notions you need, special techniques, as I said, the instruction, then the schematic, the finished measurements, and also the charts.
The charts, of course.
Yeah.
And you've got sewing patterns.
Yes,
separate.
I've got sewing patterns. So it comes in an envelope, the magazine, and you have the pattern sheets come separately. So on these pattern sheets, you have all the pattern pieces, and it's a multi-size pattern piece. So for example, if you want to fit something to yourself, you can trace over to the second size or third size or so. And I think
a bit bigger here, a bit smaller here, or wherever.
Yes,
that's excellent. That's really, really good. Okay, now what are the challenges or the things that we actually need to think about or be aware of when we're blending the 3 crafts of knitting, crochet, and sewing into one design or outfit? So I thought maybe you could give us some tips and tricks.
Well, you know, what I find really fascinating in combining the 3 crafts is that you can do everything the fashion industry does at home with your own hands.
Yeah.
So you get really independent from the fashion industry and from their sometimes questionable methods. And depending on your skill and also on the time you would like to devote to your craft, you could even make your own couture if you want to.
Totally.
So, totally. Yeah. Because they use all the things too.
Yes. I mean, I'm not as skilled as you are, but that is actually what drives me. Because I want to make beautiful things that I couldn't afford to buy.
Yeah, me too. Me too. That drives me. I really want to make fashion. Fashion is all that interests me. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you asked about combining the different crafts, and maybe when we think about combining them in one piece first, for example, when you think about maybe you want to make a summer dress, like a sewn summer dress, and you think about making a lacy insert in the front, bodice maybe crocheted or knitted. The first challenge that you have apparently is you have a piece of woven non-elastic material and of stretchy material to blend together. That's one thing. The other thing is you have 2 different fibers or materials that need to match.
Yes.
So
also for washing.
Oh, for washing, for carrying, yes, everything. Yeah, that's right, for pressing. Yes. So my first and most important tip is just to test everything. So you make little samples, lots of little samples, and you hold it against the fabric, and then you can kind of see which material complements each other best and which conveys your design message. It's also important, I think. to get you quick started, to get a success earlier and not make multiple
mistakes.
Yes. So if you blend fibers of the same content, like linen and linen, silk, merino, you will get a result probably quicker, although you can combine more than that.
Yeah.
Yes. So then maybe you're all right with your combination, and then you would start sewing it all together. So how do you do this? Well, first of all, you finish your piece, your lace piece first. Also, if it needs blocking, you block it first, and then you crochet on it on a seam allowance. So you do it really afterwards, because if you think you would do a seam allowance first, it would really contract the whole piece. Yes. And so you do it afterwards, and you do as many stitches as you need to keep it flat.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's such a good idea. Of course you need to do that, don't you?
Yeah. And you crochet a seam allowance, or knit a seam allowance of about 1 centimeter. And on my fabric, I have a seam allowance of 1.5 centimeter, and we see why that is. Then you sew it together on actually your regular machine, your sewing machine. It's nothing very special. You use a sharp needle, not a jersey needle, by the way, unless your fabric is jersey, of course. And if your yarn is a little sturdy or so, you could use a microtex needle. So it's a really sharp tip. It slides in easier.
Yeah.
When you sew, you put the crocheted or the knitted piece on top of the fabric in the way that the seam allowance of the fabric extends by about 0.5 centimeter. That's why there are different sizes of the seam allowance, because that way, so crochet is on top, fabric underneath, extending a bit. That way, the teeth of the transporter do not catch the yarn, you know.
That's a great tip.
Yeah. This is what you have to think about, these things.
That's very good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I never really had a problem with sewing these things together, but I thought of what could happen. So,
you've been doing it for a very long time, so... Well, you've been sewing since
doing it,
since 12 and knitting earlier, and then combining it together. You pick up knowledge that you don't realise you have until you have to think about it.
Actually, that's true.
And then you teach somebody, and then you think, oh yes, there's this.
Yeah, and also what you do when you're designing, you solve problems. Big parts of designing is problem solving.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you come up with ideas. So what could happen to you is that maybe your foot doesn't transport the layers properly, and then you could use a walking foot. You know, that's a foot that transports both layers separately, whereas the normal foot transports the underlayer, and the other one is supposed to go along with it, and that can shift. So that's one thing. Another thing, maybe your foot doesn't glide over the surface properly, and then you should lower the pressure of your foot. And if that is not enough, you could use a Teflon foot. It glides easier over the surface.
Okay.
Or if you do not have one, you could use a tissue paper and rip that off later.
Okay, the viewers are going to love this.
Okay.
You're brilliant.
Okay. Another thing, if you have something knitted, for example, it could be quite thick. So when you start your seam, your foot is maybe pointing upwards, and then your machine will not start sewing. So you put a piece of folded fabric underneath the back of the foot so that it is level, and then it will start sewing. So for the actual seam, I use a stitch on my machine that is called overlock stitch.
Okay, and
You
that's
can
on
see
this,
it
isn't
here.
it? Yeah.
Yes. So this is a stitch that has 2 straight stitches and then a zigzagging in between. And what this does is it allows the stretchy material a little bit of wiggle room. So when you put your garment on or you move around, so that the stitches do not pop. And if you do not have an overlock stitch on your machine, you could actually mimic this by sewing a straight stitch and then zigzagging adjacent to it, and then straight stitch again, and then it would be quite stable.
Okay, so that's interesting too. Oh, well, I'm learning lots today.
Yeah, and then when this is ready, I finish this. I haven't done it here, but I finished the seam allowance on my overlocker, and I am of course careful not to cut into this crocheted lace, but the overlock seam will also go a little bit over this and give some extra stability.
And what have you done here? Because this is really interesting. Because
Yeah.
the other thing is stretchy fabric.
Yeah, stretchy. Yes, yes,
So
yes.
explain
Yes, let's
this.
talk about stabilizing. So, first of all, what you should think of when you choose a stitch pattern, use a stitch pattern that is not too open, it does not have too many chain stitches, like the pattern here, for example. You can immediately see this will really, really stretch. So this you could use for something when you make a top or so. You could use it like a sleeve,
Yes.
hanging down, and no extra weight
Yeah.
at the bottom. So that would be suitable for this. But for something like this, use a stitch pattern that has double crochet stitches in it or lots of trebles. That's quite sturdy. And crochet, by the way, is in general sturdier than
It
knitted-
is. It
than
is,
knitting.
definitely.
Yeah. And if nothing helps, you could stabilize the whole thing with organza.
Yeah.
So organza is really, if you pull on it or so, you can.
Yes. Okay. Yeah,
This way,
it's very,
it
very...
really it doesn't stretch at all, and you can base it on your crocheted or knitted piece within the seam allowance before you join the pieces, and then use this as one layer. And if you use it comes in many colors, but if you use a new tone,
Then it's
I can show
see-through.
it like this.
Yes, we'll
yeah,
put it
yeah,
down
it's
here.
see-through. You almost do not see it.
Exactly. That's a fantastic solution for that. That's really great. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And what's this bit of...
Yes, we talked about combining materials, and of course you can combine things that aren't the same fiber content. For example, this is something that we actually use, and you will see a design later. So this is viscose fabric. You can see it's quite soft,
Yes.
and drapey and flowy, and the yarn we actually used with this dark green color is this.
Okay.
So this is single plied merino. It doesn't even have something like silk in it or so, but it is shiny.
Yes.
You can see.
And yes, that's something that I find also hard. Like often your knitted clothes are matte.
Yes.
And sort of furry.
Yeah.
And if you want to combine it together with something that is
Yeah.
like a shiny, elegant
Yeah.
fabric, it's really hard to make them go.
It comes from a different
Yes,
world, and actually the surface is very important to match things. So if you have a shiny fabric, you do need some sheen in your yarn as well. It doesn't have to be much, but I think so. Shiny goes together, and matte. Yeah.
Because I love to wear my woolens or my knits for all occasions, from around the farmyard to going out to an opera.
Me too. Yeah.
So you have to have the different fabrics and fibers.
Yes, that's right. It has to be elegant in the end. And you can also, you just see the yarn like this now, but this is also really drapey, really soft, like the fabric. So if you compare this with a piece of cotton, for example, so color-wise, it works.
It works.
But you can already see it's a bit like... rope is maybe exaggerated, but it's just a little bit stiffer. It has a slight sheen to it, but I don't know.
It doesn't have that.
It's too sturdy for it. It doesn't have the elegance. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I think you need to think what you want to convey in your design. Do you want to convey lightness, elegance, or practicability? As you said, sturdiness. And this is really practicability and sturdiness, I think.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work. Whereas this is also a cotton. It's a different color, but if you put it against the green, for example, and you see this is very, very, I hope you can see it, it's very loosely plied. And this is also quite a drapey cotton. So this is something that could still work, although it's nothing to do with the fiber content.
Okay, that's really interesting to think about. I'm really glad you spoke about that. And what is the...
And I think the most natural combination you will think of is wool and wool. Wool fabric. Of course. But I think this is actually a tricky one. Because if you have a soft fiber that contains a cashmere or a mohair, and then if you like a sweater in this yarn, and then you have a woolen skirt, in the end of the day, your fiber will be all over your skirt. I don't know if you ever experienced this. And I think the best combination wool on wool is a Shetland wool or something like it, and woolen fabric. It goes very well. Then it doesn't.
Yes, I've actually made some Marie Wallen designs, some early ones before her wool came out in the Jamiesons of Shetland, which is perfect for feral. And then from the same factory or mill, I've bought the woven sort of tartans. It's not really a tartan, but it's similar to that, to make a skirt out of it. They just perfectly match with all the heathered colours.
I bought Shetland fabric too and combined. I think it's perfect. So this is a tweed wool, a tweed fabric, and this is actually a Wednesday long wool, and it's not as soft as like a merino would be or so. And I think this would still work, because what you can do is you can do the rub test. So this is what I do, and then you can see nothing sticks on it. I think this would work as well.
That's great. Okay, and this belongs to this. So.
Yeah, this belongs to this. Yes. So I used the combination myself in a design for the magazine, and I made the Arcadia costume. And what I wanted to do here, I wanted to turn a classic costume into a more lighter, summery and more informal version. Mm-hmm. So I thought about how the sun shines through the forest and has this lacy effects on the ground, and I wanted to capture this in my design. And so I wanted to interrupt the opacity of the fabric and thought of lace insertions that I do in between. And as I said, I chose a lace pattern that's full of trebles and also, but still has this lacy effect, is this open lacy effect. And
the trebles, it keeps it stiff, which is like this fabric, this linen fabric, isn't it?
Genau, yeah, right. It's this yarn is linen, cotton, and silk blend, and it's actually this yarn. You can see it's really, really fine. Yeah. And if you pull on it, it doesn't have any give. It holds the shape really, really well. So it's a Asa by Ito yarns.
And that is a perfect combination with this. And okay, I have to say, Melanie's sewing is so beautiful. It's extraordinarily quality sewing. I'm so impressed.
Thank you very much.
So we'll have a look at this. Here.
So you can see what I meant. Here you can actually see an overlocked seam. You can see it goes a little bit into the seam allowance of the fabric. And what I did here, so that the lining does not shine through, normally you would attach the lining here by hand later, but in order also to not pull on your back, so we just left it open.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, the skirt has an A-line shape. So
yes, it does, which is
actually
very flattering.
It is.
Okay, that's great. Very, very beautiful. I think this looks even more beautiful in real life than it does in the magazine.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. We hope you've been enjoying the program so far. Now, we rely entirely on our viewers for financial support to keep producing Fruity Knitting. If you would like to be one of these viewers who enables the show to continue, then you can do so by visiting our Patreon page and signing up as a Fruity Knitting patron. Just go to patreon.com/fruityknitting, where you can choose between 3 levels of support: Hebrideans, Merinos, and Shetland patrons. We also try to provide some extra benefits to our patrons, like discounts and live events as a little thank you. So once you've signed up, you will receive updates on these benefits in your home feed, but alternatively, you can go directly to our Patreon page and browse the different collections. We have a fun community of Shetland patrons who join us twice a month for our online live events, once for a cozy knit and chat session, and once to meet a special guest who we've previously featured on this show. Previous live event guests include yarn producers and designers such as Kay Fassett, John Arbin Yarns, Marie Wallen and Charlotte Stone, and many other fantastic people.
Yes, and by the way, we have a Knit and Chat live event coming up this Sunday.
That's right. Thanks for the reminder. Luckily, we also record these events and then turn them into an audio podcast so that our Shetland and Merino patrons can listen to them at a later date. So if you're a regular viewer, we invite you to support Fruity Knitting financially as a Fruity Knitting patron. And of course, we want to say a great big thank you to all of the Fruity Knitting patrons out there, because this show could not exist without you.
And as Madeline said, whenever we can, we like to thank our patrons for their support by offering discounts together with our guests. And we have 2 really great discounts to offer you this episode. So we interviewed Trina Bertelsen from CaMaRose back in episode 141. And during the interview, I wore one of Trina's designs. It was a cardigan, but I decided to wear it back the front so it looked like a top instead. and you can see me wearing it here in this picture. Trina was a bit afraid that people would start asking for the pattern, and as she predicted, that happened. So now Trina has made a new pattern and she's named it Andrea's Summer Smock. And she's very kindly making this pattern available for free exclusively to Fruity Knitting patrons for 1 month. So I feel very honoured to have a design temporarily named after me, and I'm super thrilled that she's offering it as a free gift to our patrons for a limited time. That's extremely generous. So thank you, Trina, for doing that. And the yarn that the design uses is the CaMaRose Midnight Zoll, which is a blend of baby alpaca tencel with a small percentage of merino, and it looks and behaves just like a typical silk mohair blend. And we're also thrilled to announce that our guest Melanie Chalet is offering Fruity Knitting patrons a 20% discount off everything in her online store. So this includes the very comprehensive magazine, The Valiant Tailoress, and her tutorials on smocking and slip stitches. And in part 2 of the interview, we really go into a lot of detail about these 2 great techniques and the wonderful possibilities you have after learning these techniques. So a huge thank you to Melanie for this very generous patron discount.
So in the last episode, we announced the Pura Vida knitting retreats, where you can join the 2 of us, as well as the Canadian knitwear designer Claudia Quintanilla, for some great knitting experiences in a really stunning location.
Yeah, so earlier this year in February, Claudia and I travelled to Costa Rica to choose a location for the knitting retreats. And the nature resort and spa that we chose was the very last place that we looked at, and it stood out way above everything else that we saw. I can still remember arriving and just repeating over and over, wow, this is perfect. This is heavenly. It's exactly what we want. And you immediately also got the impression that the hotel was run very well, because all of the staff, no matter what they were doing, were very well trained. They're very polite. They're very well informed, extremely helpful. You felt so looked after,
yeah.
Which is exactly what we wanted. So the nature resort is located right next to the Manuel Antonio National Park. So it's surrounded by coastal rainforest, and it also has a breathtaking view over the Pacific Ocean. And this stunning view is visible from all the dining areas in the hotel. So can you imagine every morning while you're eating your tropical fruit breakfast, seeing this gorgeous view? And the property itself is a jungle environment with over 12 acres of wildlife and rich tropical rainforest. And there's lots of little pathways leading to secluded spots where you can just relax and knit or read a book or meditate. And there's also several walking trails at your doorstep where you can see wildlife such as sloths and monkeys and toucans and macaws. It's very exciting. And one of the paths even leads to a small beach where you can dip your feet in the water or go for a swim in the ocean. So as an Australian, I'm used to swimming in a cold ocean because the water's coming straight up from Antarctica. And I couldn't believe how warm the ocean is around Costa Rica. It's just like swimming in a bath. So if you're at all fussy about swimming in cold waters, you will not have a problem.
Sounds like heaven.
It is. It's unbelievable. It's just so... It's like paradise.
Yeah, I had that experience with the warm water in the Mittelmeer. What's that? Italy.
Yeah.
The waters there.
Yeah.
That really surprised me as
Mediterranean Sea.
That's right.
So this retreat is all about spending time together in a heavenly environment, sharing our mutual passion for knitting and learning new knitting skills and making some good friends. But if you have a friend who knits and you want to come together, that's also very possible, and you can share a room together. Because the hotel rooms are huge. They each have 2 queen-sized beds in them, a large ensuite bathroom and a balcony. Just when you're filling out the registration form, you need to write the full name of your friend, and then you'll be put in the same room together if that's what you would like.
You can also bring your non-knitting partner with you, and they'll join us for all meals and non-knitting activities. There are many interesting and fun activities in the surrounding areas that your partner can enjoy while us knitters are busy with our knitting workshops. There's actually been quite a few knitters who've already joined with their partners or signed up for it. And we're really happy about this because it means that your partners have the option to hang out together if they want to and go off on their own non-knitting adventures, I'll call it. Of course, if they want some downtime, they can also just relax and take a swim on the beautiful property instead. Now, besides knitting, we will be joining a jungle tour where a guide will tell us all about the exotic plants and animals and the local ecosystem, which I'm personally really looking forward to. But we also want you to experience some Latin American culture. So we're hosting a special gala dinner on the last night of each retreat. There will be live music and you have the choice to join a Latin dance class. Now, it doesn't matter what level of experience you have, it really doesn't. You can dance with your own partner if they've joined you, or you have the choice to choose your own experienced dance partner who will take you through all the different steps.
That sounds like a heap of fun.
And everybody gets a dance partner.
Yeah.
If you want to.
If you're not a dancer, you don't have to dance. You can just sit back and listen to the music and knit and have a chat.
Enjoy the atmosphere. Yeah. I've actually been to quite a few Salsa and Bachata parties here in Germany, and my experience has been that it's always been very relaxed and open, and typically you will dance with different people. Of course, you don't have to. And the basic steps are so simple that even a novice can start dancing immediately. Yeah. So I've been to obviously really excited about this. Now, unfortunately, the retreat schedule doesn't allow for all interesting activities in the surrounding area to be included. However, in case you bring your partner or you decide to extend your stay, I do want to mention a few things. Most of you probably have heard or know that Costa Rica has a history in coffee and chocolate production. In fact, there was an indigenous tribe that up until the 1930s even used the cacao bean as currency, which I thought was pretty cool. And other tribes or indigenous groups have also used the cacao bean in different rituals, apparently. There are quite a few chocolate and coffee plantations in Costa Rica. One of these is near the resort, and it offers tours that take you around the plantation and teach you about the history of coffee and chocolate making. They also show you the whole coffee and chocolate making process, and you taste some fresh coffee at the end.
So if you like the ocean, you can spend the day cruising along the coastline on a sailboat and snorkeling. You can also go fishing and explore the local mangrove swamps by boat or kayak. The mangroves have a rich ecosystem and you'll see many fish species. But if you prefer to stay on land, you can also explore the nearby national parks and go bird spotting.
So getting back to the knitting, Claudia is designing a special Pura Vida knitting retreat design for summer to match the Costa Rican vibe. We're keeping the design a surprise for now, but as our guest, you will receive the pattern as well as the yarn to knit it. In another of our workshops called Embellishing Your Knits, you'll learn to add a touch of elegance to your design by using ribbons, applique, beads, and embroidery. The techniques you'll learn in this workshop are used in Claudia's upcoming book, which will be released later this year in September by Lane Publishing, and all knitting participants will receive a signed copy of the book as well. Learning to embellish your knits with different materials like ribbons and beads and so on actually really appeals to me because lately I've come to appreciate the boring stocking stitch top because I make so many mistakes otherwise with more complicated knits when I'm meeting up with a friend. And with embroidery and such, you can still make your piece unique and a bit more fancy. So I find that attractive.
It is true. I'm enjoying stocking stitch a whole lot more than I used to as well. I think it's when you're really exhausted or you're doing a whole lot of other things, just the rhythm of stocking stitch is very meditative.
Yeah, and less mistakes.
Yeah. So I'm also going to do a workshop and I'll do this on some of my favourite techniques. I haven't decided what exactly will be included in this workshop. I'll have to put more thought into it, but it'll be techniques that have been game changers for my own knitting. So maybe, and this is not final, but maybe something like cutting your knitting open to fix a mistake and grafting it back again. That's been something that has been really helpful for me. Or when you're doing colour work, how to catch the floats on both hands and weave in the ends as you knit so that you don't have to do all that weaving right at the end. Most people can do that on the knit side, but if you can do it on the purl side, you have even more freedom. For instance, you can take a Marie Wallen beautiful design, and often her designs are done in pieces. You can knit it in the round up to the armholes, and then you've got the freedom to do smaller sections back and forward because you can purl and catch your floats on the purl side. So that's a handy skill. Not sure if I'm going to include it, but these are some things that have been game changers for me. Maybe knitting backwards, or maybe knitting complicated cables without a cable needle. That was also a game changer. So
sounds very topsy-turvy.
I have to put some more thought into what, but it'll be fun. The workshop will be fun for sure. So during the retreats, we really want you to feel very well looked after. And one thing can be frustrating in a workshop with just one teacher is that all of a sudden 6 or 7 people simultaneously really need help. So to avoid you waiting for long times in a workshop, there will be 1 teacher and 3 skilled assistants to help you. So that's an overview of what's happening during the retreats. If this is something that you think you might enjoy and like to participate in, we'd love to welcome you. And you can find more information on the website artisanretreats.com. So now we are up to part 2 of our interview with Melanie Chalet. You're going to love this. There's a lot of great knitterly, sewily and crochet details in here. Right at the end, there is Melanie goes into detail about the smocking and the slip stitches, and those techniques you'll really enjoy having under your belt. So we hope you enjoy that, and it's time for us to say goodbye.
Yes, thank you very much for spending time with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next June.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so what was the brief that you gave the designers for the first issue? Maybe you can just describe the aesthetic that you wanted, because it's a definite aesthetic. You just mentioned a little bit before.
Yeah.
And then show us some more of the designs, because Melanie's brought along quite a lot of the designs from the first issue.
Yeah, sure. Okay. The overall aesthetic of the magazine is feminine.
Yes.
And the topic for this first issue was the enchanted forest. And I thought of the era of Romanticism, especially the German Romanticism, and its artists were especially interested in folk tunes and folk tales, folk music, and they concentrated on fantasy and on dreams and on sense and emotion in contrast to rationality. So what I really wanted in the designs was romantic designs with flowy element, moving, with shapes that are a bit unusual maybe, and to steer away from too clear shapes, to classic shapes, and maybe something even with a bit of a fairy tale mood.
Yes,
yeah.
and the woods is a big part of German folklore.
It is. For example, the folk tales of the Brother Grimm.
Yes,
they are in this area, from this area, and they almost all play in the forest.
Yes.
Okay. And in my briefing, I asked especially for capes or cape-like shapes, and for interesting sleeve details and sleeves. Interesting sleeves.
And a lot of like you said earlier, a lot of the designers contributed to the knitting and the crochet.
That's right.
And you had to do the sewing.
I had to
bits.
yes.
So we haven't got the knitting garments with us, because they're gone back to the designers. But we have got the sewing thing. So talk about the knitted garments first, and then we'll show how you've created the sewing garment to go with it.
Yes. So the first outfit I would like to talk about is a crocheted spring cape designed by Christina Diaz. And Christina was inspired by a picture that I had in my briefing of yellow forest flower buds. And she thought about the fact that these forest flowers are hidden most of the year in the layers of the forest ground. And then suddenly in spring they emerge colorfully. And so she used a shell stitch crochet pattern to capture these buds. And she used interchanging sections, these shell stitch pattern and treble sections, and all in a dark forest green color. So they are there in texture, but hidden in color.
Yeah.
And for this thought of suddenly emerging in spring, she worked a contrast border in 2 different pinks. And the treble sections are also used for shaping the cape.
Yeah.
And so in my design, I thought, oh, this is really a romantic topos. This thought of it's there in the mystical dark, and then suddenly appearing like a fantasy. And I thought I want it in a dress too. And I thought, how could I continue this train of thought? And I thought, okay, what is hidden in a dress normally is the lining. So I make this visible. So I decided to let the lining take center stage, and I put a long white ruffle on the lining, and it appears underneath the dress.
That's so cool. I love the thought that's going into this.
And it's cut from broderie anglaise, and it has this little dots, and it's a little bit like the flower buds in her design.
And the
hemline is asymmetrical because, as I said, I wanted to go away a bit from the classic shapes and do something a little bit moving, different. And the broderie anglaise also springs up in the neckline again as little ruffles. And the dress has princess seams, and it always forms a feminine, flattering silhouette.
It's really, and the material is gorgeous.
It is, it is. It is Armani summer linen. It's very fine and very beautifully printed. Yes.
Stunning. Okay, so we've got a skirt here.
Yes, we've got
Talk about the top.
Yes.
I love the top that goes with this skirt.
Yes. So the top or little sleeveless pullover is a design by Antoinette Andriese. And she thought about how in summer, how the rays of sunshine fall through the trees. So in summer, the trees would be very leafy. So the ray would be sharper or denser at the beginning. And then when the trees branch out to the bottom, the ray gets wider as well. And she captured that in a colorwork yoke. And I think what she did, she really reduced the overall form or the overall view onto a forest to a very graphic design. I think it's just a little bit like modern art. It's really like the essence of the forest, I thought, the light, so the element. And then she, after the colorwork yoke, she continues with a lacy pattern. And the lace is the exact shape of the last colorwork form or colorwork round form that she has on the yoke.
They're stunning designs. Okay, so we've got one here.
Yes, and then so for the skirt, I thought, okay, Antoinette captured like the element of light, so I want to be that bold too and capture something else, an element. And I thought of the wind because rustling is the name of her design. I thought, okay, I need a floor-length skirt that sweeps over the leaves onto the ground and make a rustling sound.
And the layers of the forest too.
And the layers too. And I thought of like furs that will move in the wind. Yeah. And so I wanted a skirt that has this moving element and that flows around you with every step. And I designed a skirt with 3 volants, and actually the overall shape of the skirt is straight. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the triangle shape. Yeah. And the shape of the furs, it really comes through the volants that are attached to it. So there's
this underneath.
I have put organza. You had this before. Organza underneath because the viscose is quite soft, and I wanted to stabilize it a little bit. So
and let it sort of stand out a bit.
Yes, and when the wind flows through.
So, exactly.
Yes, and you can see maybe on camera there are little dots woven into it, and they also resemble a little bit the colorwork yoke pattern.
Stunning. And we have another dress here.
Then Trine Kalbus designed leaf pattern shrug. So she took to the sleeves and made something that's basically sleeves. And she captured the forest theme with a leafy lace design, and also in the cuffs of the shrug. So there are sections of stockinette stitch and lace interchanging, and the stockinette stitch sections are cabled at the end of the cuff, like intertwined twigs, and it takes the cuff in a little bit together with some decreases and creates a bell-like shape.
And you've got a lovely crisp summer dress here.
Yes, I made a shirt dress because Trine's design was quite elegant, I thought. You could even make evening wear out of it. But for the magazine, I did want to keep it in the daytime. So I thought of the shirt dress, but I didn't want it too mundane. I wanted to have it feminine, a little bit elegant. So I cut it in half, basically, and made a 3-tiered skirt. So the 3 tiers, yeah, they are gathered and sewn on, and they are sewn on with a visible seam, so that they form little ruches.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And so what I love is the shaping here.
Yeah, thank you. So Trine's shrug can be worn with either bare shoulders or with covered shoulders, but either way it emphasizes the shoulders, and I wanted to do that too, and also I wanted to give room to the shrug. So I wanted open shoulders, bare shoulders, and I did this.
Actually, let's light here, and the overhead camera can show the stitching.
So what I did is I lengthened the back yoke. See, it's here, to go up over the shoulder to the front, and then it meets the front bodice on a raglan-like shape, and this creates this opening, though that the shoulders are completely
That is
bare.
really gorgeous. I love the cut of that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it also really emphasizes the shoulders, I think. And I think what's quite nice about it, if you're a knitter, you can really wear all your summer cardigans with it, because it's very, very comfortable to wear with a cardigan.
Exactly, and even lace over it, so you could see this underneath.
Right,
is great.
Right.
And here's the little gathering that you were talking about.
Right.
That's excellent. Okay. Yes. So you're currently working on the second issue of the magazine, and this time the theme is Venice, Italy. So what kinds of designs can we look forward to seeing?
So, Venice as a backdrop for the second issue offers an abundance of inspiration. It's history, it's art, it's architecture, everything, the lagoon, the nature. Everything is textured if you walk through the old town. And what I am really looking for in the designs this time is opulence, like opulence in color, in embellishment, in texture, in patterns. And for the colors, I think Venice has a very distinctive color palette.
Yes.
With the special light, you have really special blues in the sky. And if the water is clean, the lagoon is also turquoise blue. And then
the buildings.
And the buildings, it has like when the sun shines in the morning or in the evening, rose tones and the apricot and terracotta colors. So this is also the color palette I'm looking for in my designs for this issue.
We have a stunning design here in front of us, so this is going to be part of it.
Yeah, this is going to be part of it, yes. And this is a winter design, so the next magazine will cover all seasons. So you have summer designs, winter designs, in between season designs. So, and this is the Giacomo sweater. And it is inspired by the Bridge of Sighs. Probably most of the viewers will know it. It connects the Doge's Palace with the new prison. And it was said that when somebody was convicted of a crime in the Doge's Palace, they were led to their cell over this bridge, and the view through the window was the last glimpse of freedom they had, because
tragic.
Before they were incarcerated. And so the main pattern of this design is actually coming from the brickwork in the windows of the bridge. And the bridge is also adorned with heads or with faces, and from afar it just looks like bubbles or bowls or so. Yeah. And I included it in the as a border for the hemline, for the neckline.
Yes,
and also as a border to start the sleeve. Yeah.
Okay, this center pattern here, slip stitches, is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I did test several things, yeah.
And that really looks like the lattice work, doesn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it does. Yes. Yeah. So the most famous prisoner who was actually led over this bridge was Giacomo Casanova. And he is said also to be the only one who ever escaped the prison. And when you look at pictures of Casanova, he is always painted in lavish clothes. You know, he always has ruffles coming from his coat or lace, and then a velvet overcoat embellished. And I wanted to do something with lavish sleeves.
Yes, flamboyant.
Flamboyant, yes. And so I made really big sleeves. I thought of bell sleeves. And I achieved this shape entirely by smocking. So if you look at the sleeve, it is the actual knitting is just a straight rectangle, nothing more, just very wide rectangle. And then at the upper arm, it is taken in with smocking. And after that, a regular sleeve cap is worked.
So it's worked bottom up?
Bottom up, yes, in pieces, because this is a DK weight 100% alpaca. And alpaca has the tendency to lengthen over time.
Yes.
So I did want to have stability of seams. And,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so you've started here. That's
Yes.
pretty well
Yeah.
straight up, no decreasing. And then you've got decreasing in here?
No,
nothing.
Nothing. Up to here, it was
It's
really
exactly the same.
Exactly the same width.
Okay.
Just rectangle. And after that, you decrease massively.
Yes.
Then for the sleeve
That's very interesting. Smocking is fantastic. What a great skill to learn, just to put in shaping wherever you want.
Yes, and you can use contrast colors, and it also adds some ornamental embellishment.
And this is done afterwards.
Afterwards, you sew your piece together first. You block your piece, do everything, and the last thing you do is smocking.
And is this is stocking stitch still,
Stocking
isn't
stitch
it? That's
still.
not a ribbing.
Yes. No, it's not a
That's
ribbing.
amazing.
Stocking
I've
stitch.
never done this. I have to do this technique. Okay.
And in the neckline and in the hemline, it is 2x2 ribbing.
Okay. So it's two, and so it's actually quite a loose neck until you bring it in.
Smock it. Yes.
And then that is just, if we show
Yes.
everybody inside.
You see, you always smock. I will show you later.
Yes.
You always smock over 2 rows, and then you do a zigzag stitch so that it is still elastic, and that's why you have the zigzag.
And what a great
backflows.
way of just putting in another accent colour.
I think so too. You can do
That's-
many things with it.
And this is beautiful. I just want to say the heathered shades is just like the buildings.
I thought so too. There are little golden flecks sometimes in it,
Yeah.
or yellow flecks, and it's really like the sun shines onto the palazzos.
Okay, so that's utterly stunning. Okay,
Thank you very
now
much.
what about what we've got behind us?
Yes. So we are moving away from winter into summer, and so this design is also inspired by a bridge, by the Rialto Bridge. And before the famous bridge of today was built, there were several wooden bridges that burned down, rotted away, or just broke down. And the bridge of today was built in the end of the 16th century and was the first stone bridge going over the Canale Grande. And the great innovation, architectural innovation, was that it's not made up of single elements put together, but it spans the canal in one big bow. Uninterrupted bow. And I thought that's an interesting thing, and I wanted to have this in my design. So for the cardigan, I wanted a pleated effect. And what I did was I used the coconuts method. It starts at the shoulders and it goes from the bottom down. And I used a slip stitch pattern here as well that creates this pleated effect.
Let's put it on the table. If we slip that off. That's right. And then we can have a close-up look.
See, it starts here. And then the pleats go down from here, like in one big arc or in one big bow, if you see it from the sides. And then it really goes, flows down without any shaping except from the
Increases,
V-neck. Yes, increases, and also for the sleeve caps, but this is all straight. And then it flows into a 2x2 ribbing, which also takes the whole thing in a little bit. And then it flows into wider pleats, and these pleats form the peplum.
That's stunning.
And underneath the Rialto Bridge, there's the Rialto Market, which is a fruit and vegetable market. And when it begins and ends, its beginning and ending is always announced by the bells of the San Giacomo Church. And I thought, okay, I end my design with a bell pattern, bell ruffles.
Okay,
And then when everything is finished, you take the waist further in with smocking. And this is also smocking on a 2x2 ribbing, but done slightly differently. So you sew different stitches together and it takes the knitting in even more.
Okay, that is amazing. And that is all afterwards
Afterwards,
with the needle and thread.
Yes, right.
And it's also been done here.
Yes, on the sleeves, yes.
Okay.
Sleeves are also not shaped in any way. It just really takes the smocking takes it in at the end.
Okay, that is very beautiful. And what is the yarn?
The yarn is cotton. It's Luxor by BC Garns. It's a German brand.
Okay. So the dress that goes with it.
Yes, the dress picks up the peplum of the cardigan with 2 volants at the neckline and 2 volants at the hem. And the neckline is elasticated so that you can wear the dress off shoulder as well. And
Very romantic.
Yeah. And the waist is taken in with an elastic too. And actually it's quite comfortable in the upper body. It's quite comfortable to wear.
And again, she picks the most stunning fabrics.
This fabric is actually special. It's a viscose by Crizia, and Crizia is an Italian brand. They produce high quality silk fabrics with beautiful prints.
Yeah.
And before the silk is printed, it is always tested on viscose first. So several 100 meters of viscose run through the printing machine. And when the print is good, these viscose meters are discarded. They're thrown away. And we have a lady in Basel who runs a fabric shop, and she picks up these discarded fabrics and sells them at a very good price. And this is a Crizia, actually, viscose pre-run.
It's absolutely beautiful. Okay.
So the next outfit I wanted to show you is also a summery outfit, and it is called Peggy. Peggy refers to Peggy Guggenheim. When you're in Venice, you will very, very likely visit the Peggy Guggenheim collection. Peggy had a palazzo at the canal, and there she lived until the end of her life. And she also kept large parts of her vast modern art collection there. And Peggy Guggenheim is a really interesting personality. I think she was one of the most important collectors for modern art. And she was a patron for many, many modern artists. For example, Jackson Pollock, with whom she also had an affair. And she also saved many artists' lives who were persecuted during the Nazi time. For example, she paid the voyage for André Breton and his family to America. She financed Max Ernst, whom she later married, and several others. So she really saved lives. And also the art, actually, just by buying it, and sending it to America. So we can today look at it, and it didn't become extinct because of her. She was also quite an eccentric personality, if you read about her. So she was a bit of a rebel. She didn't listen to any conventions or so. She really followed her own taste. However, she didn't really spend so much money on fashion. She really spent it all on her art. But when some designers, some of her artist friends designed for her, for example, her iconic glasses, these bed glasses, they were designed by Edward Melcars. She wore it, and it was then her signature look. Or earrings by Alexander Calder too. I think she really was like a flower of her time, a really, really individual. And in Venice, she was called the last Dogaressa of Venice. So I really wanted to honor her in a design, and I made bloomy skirt that is adorned with two big ruffles. One is a straight big ruffle that's underneath, and then it's a wavy ruffle on top of it. The skirt is quite wide, but it has a wide fitted yoke around the hips and waist, so it's still swelled. So despite the big ruffles, it doesn't look too big on you.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And the color is, of course, inspired by the color of the lagoon. And then you might have seen also these posts that are in the lagoon that hold the ropes of the gondolas.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what is the material?
This is a blend of linen, viscose, and silk. Mm-hmm.
It's very beautiful. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you've got a top to go with it.
Yes, I have a crop top to go with it, and this top uses a slip stitch pattern. And what it does, it creates a very soft textured effect. It's really like a shadow, I think. And what I like about it is you have these little lozenges. You have a structure and a texture, but it doesn't add heaviness to it. It's still a very light,
it's beautiful.
very summery.
It's really beautiful.
It's quite cropped, so it ends about here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that stands out immediately is the shape of the satin.
Yes, that's a bit special. So it's actually very easy. So you have shaping at the armpit, quite a good curve.
Strong curve.
And then it goes up just straight really. And it's knitted top down in one piece. So you start at the shoulders, go to the front down here, to the back down here, do the shaping here, and then the rest is knitted in the round.
I'll hold it up. Okay, that's very, very beautiful.
And it uses Italian bind off on the neckline and hemline.
And this yarn it's a soft wool.
This is merino. Yeah, no, it's really pure merino by Knitting for Olive. It's actually really wide.
Knitting for Olive.
Yeah, it's a 3-ply. That's why it's so fine and really quite a little bit
I
elegant.
love the shadow texture on it.
Yeah, me too.
Very, very...
I thought it was very befitting for Venice because they have all this texture, but
Yes.
still a lightness in
Yeah.
the city. Yeah, and that's what I wanted to have in the design.
Absolutely stunning. Okay, and behind us.
Yes. So this is the Canale Grande dress, the Grande Finale. It's about the Canale Grande actually. I wanted to have some pleating. And what I did was I made a panel, and it's actually sewn pleats. So you make stand-up pleats, and then you sew over them.
We'll put it here, yes.
This is sewn like it's standing up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then once you have done it, you press everything, and then you sew in one direction
and then
and
the
then
other.
this and this. And this again.
That's so gorgeous, like a wave.
Like a wave, yes. That's what I wanted to capture from the Canale Grande, and then it flows like into the big ocean, into pleats. It really opens up, and this little embellishment here, depicts the gondolas a little bit.
That is really stunning. Very classic. So it's got the pleating on the front, and it's a princess line, isn't it? Not really, because it's not going all the way down.
It's a very big dart actually.
Oh, it is, yes.
Here, yes,
Okay.
and the little embellishment goes around the back as well.
Absolutely stunning.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so do you know how many designs you'll have in the second issue?
I have such a package of drawings, so I have to limit myself. I wanted to have about 10 outfits, but it's not an exact number yet.
Oh, that's wonderful. We're so looking forward to it when it comes out.
Me too.
Okay, now you are doing, Melanie's doing 2 workshops, teaching 2 workshops during the Swiss Yarn Festival. One is on smocking, which we've seen some already, and the other's on slip stitches, which both of those things are really featuring in issue 2, aren't
yes,
they?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So could you show us some examples and just explain what the participants are going to be learning?
Yeah, okay, yes. So, smocking was first used on sewn material, on woven material, and was used to take big parts of material in and to keep it elastic. It was actually used before elastic bands were invented. And you see when you smock over them, over a fabric, it keeps its elasticity. So it's really quite dense, but you can stretch it.
I love the texture of it.
Me too. I love it too. Yeah. However, when you use it on a knitted fabric, you have the effect of taking in, but you don't have this elasticity anymore. So your piece will not spring back to its original form. It has a little bit elasticity, so that you can, for example, put it over your head, but not in the way this material is. Yeah. This is to keep some elasticity. You are always smocking over 2 rows. I will show you in a minute. What you first need to do is you first mark the stitches that you want to sew together with sewing thread, so that you know which stitches are going to be joined. So you're really sewing this. You use a tapestry needle and some extra thread, and then sew stitch 1 and stitch 2 together and have some stitches in between, and then this takes it all in. So I can show you. I have already made some stitches here. So you go in with the needle near the stitch, and then you come out. See, this is marked underneath. You come out, and you must be careful to not pull this too tight, because you do not want to contract it in half.
Yes, you don't, not lengthwise, just widthwise.
Yes. And then we have the next stitch here. And
so
you really
far away.
Go underneath, yes. There, I think 4 stitches are in between. You take both legs of the stitch. And then you go around as much as you want to. I usually go around like 2 or 3 times.
And you can choose, you've got 4 stitches in between that, but you can choose to have just 2.
You can 6 or 5 or just 2, yes, as you want to. That's right. Well, actually, the amount you take in changes with the amount of stitches you have in between it. So you could also use this for shaping, for example, a yoke. Yes. Like if you alternate the amount of stitches in between. So, yeah, this happens. So you always get some little bit tangled. So then you go down again into the first row and do the next stitch here. See how this is a little bit diagonal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so exciting.
It's actually fun. I love it. I just love it.
This is a technique I've never done before. I love finding techniques I haven't done before.
Okay. Here's one.
And I can see it's really handy because you could use this to repair sloppy things.
Absolutely. You can use this if you have overblocked a piece accidentally to take it in again, or if something really stretched out with wear, you can take it back in again. You can also use it only in parts, just like darts, for example. You could just smock a part here or here, or in the back, or if something is normally on the back, you have a little bit, it goes out a little bit.
You can even do a little band.
Yeah, and you can take it in the back, so that's really shaped in the back.
Yes, as we were talking before, this is something that Madeline mentioned, is that you can tell you're a sewer the way you do your knitting. And you were saying that sewing really informs
Yes,
knitting.
I think so, yes. You know how things are constructed, where you need to do the shaping to get the form right. Yeah, that's true.
And also your body, like how to fit things.
Yes, you really have to measure yourself when you sew, and you get to know your body well and also what suits you well. Yeah.
Okay, so this is one thing they're learning,
Yeah, so you can smock over several stitches. You can smock on just regular stocking stitch, as we have already seen. So it always creates this little honeycomb effect. But you can also have purl stitches in between. Like you would have one row of stocking stitch, then, for example, 3 purl stitches, then a stocking stitch again, and you sew the stocking stitches.
Okay, so that's like a very wide rib. One
rib.
One knit, 3 purl, one knit.
Right. Then 2 by 2 ribbing, we have already seen. You can either sew together the 2 right stitches that are just adjacent to the purl stitches, and this is more an ornamental effect and doesn't take the fabric in quite that much. But I think it's a nice effect.
It is.
Or you could sew like the outer stitches together. So it's really a wider distance that you do, and that's why it takes it in much more. And the columns, the stocking stitch columns, they turn a little bit. I think it's a really
That's true.
nice
So it's like a little bit like a cable.
Yes.
Or a twisted stitch
yes.
in amongst it. Okay, that's
Yeah.
exciting. What is this?
Yeah. Another way to mark your stitches you want to sew together. One is with sewing thread. One is you could knit it in. If you know exactly where you want to put your smocking, you could mark it like this. So you could purl stitches in between the 2 stocking stitches you want to sew together. So you sew this stitch and this stitch together next to it, so you don't have to do the marking.
That's interesting as well. That's so exciting. And here you've added beads.
You can embellish it further by contrasting yarn, or you can sew beads on it, or you could do a little embroidery on it, like with these little French knots. You can put them on top of the smocking, or you could put it in the little dent or in the little valley that is forming. Yeah, there are several.
That's really great.
And you can use it on brioche.
On brioche?
Yes.
That's great, because brioche can be too stretchy.
Tends to stretch, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, of course you can, because it's just like a rib, really.
Yes, right.
And that's a really interesting effect as well, isn't it?
I think so too. And I think it looks actually well in segments. For example, if you imagine a V-neck slip over and just with a segment down the middle, it's, I think, quite nice.
That is such an exciting technique that you can do. I can see you could get carried away and just take all your garments out and start having a smock here and smock there.
Yes.
Actually, I'm taking a break now and knitting a very boring stocking stitch cardigan, and I've decided that I'm going to, instead of doing my 1 by 1 rib, I'm going to do a 2 by 2 rib and smock it.
Okay.
That's your inspiration from today.
Very good. You really have to swatch carefully. So you really have to do a big swatch, like about 60 stitches or so, because if you have a small sample like this, never enough for a swatch, because this will give you false measurements.
But if you're not wanting it to be too much of a big change, the 2x2 rib is better, you're saying.
Yes,
if
and
you do the inside,
one, yes, the inside,
stitches.
yes, this doesn't change it too much.
Yeah, I think I'll start with that.
Yeah. Also, the kind of thread you're using, the thickness of this thread is also has an effect when you go around your whole body. Not in a little piece like this, but the thicker it is, the less it takes it in, and vice versa.
Okay. Okay, that's very interesting. Well, that is really fun. So I wanted a really boring project, and now I've got myself
it's getting
up a level
exciting.
again. Okay, and the other one is slip stitches. So we'll have a look at that.
Yes. So my second course is, as you said, about slip stitches, and this is actually a technique that was invented by a Swedish designer. It's Britt-Marie Christoffersen, and she introduces it in her book Pop Knitting. It's a very, very lovely knitting book. She has other techniques in it too. And what you actually do is you combine a slip stitch with a stocking stitch, and the slip stitch is lengthened and will come to the foreground, and this creates this shadowy effect. So when you look from behind, it's really, as you do in color work, just with one color, you have the floats going in the back.
I love the backside texture.
Yeah, me
as well.
too. It's quite nice. And yeah, you can do quite nice patterns with it. The technique actually works best if you have a solid form, like on lozenges or on stripes or on rectangles or something like this. If you have something really, really fine or so, it doesn't show that well. However, of course, I tried a little bit around, and you can do finer shapes if you do 2 stitches next to each other and about 2 rows, and then it will still show.
Yeah, I love that sort of shadow texture.
Yeah, me too. You can do stripes in every direction. You can do longer lozenges, smaller lozenges. Like here, you've already seen this in the Peggy. These are longer lozenges. You can do checked patterns in different sizes. Creates a different effect. I think this would be nice on a boxy cardigan.
Yes.
Yeah. And little boxes. Or you can do alternating longer stripes. So it's also quite a graphic effect, I think.
I love it. I love all of it. Okay. And
then
very interesting.
What you can do is you can do welts with it. So here you will always slip with the yarn on the back of your design or
your work.
Your work, yes. And here you slip the stitches with the yarn on front of the design. So you knit one, you slip one with the yarn on front, and you do it over several rows. So you really lengthen one stitch, and then you work over the entire row, over all stitches, and then it contracts the lengthened stitch, and this forms the welts.
That's extraordinary.
Britt-Marie Christoffersen is extraordinary, I think, yeah.
Is this book in English?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's beautiful. And that's exactly what
I used it, yes, on this little bolero jacket. And I really just used the welts. And I used 2 rows of stocking stitch in between so that they're not too close together. And that's about it, actually.
It's a beautiful texture and it's a lovely design.
Yeah, yeah. It's a merino silk blend, so it's really quite soft. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Okay.
And I made a colorwork sweater where I used it for the yoke. So I actually turned it around. I didn't do a colorwork yoke, but this technique. And what is interesting here maybe is the ending. So you can use, when you have done this welt, Italian bind off, where you need to slip one stitch. So you're already half into the Italian bind off at the end. So at the end, when you want to bind off, you just turn it all around and you do the same what you did on the front. Vice versa on the back, so you slip stitches on the back, and then you can sew the stitches off, and they all go to the inside.
I love this technique as well. That's really beautiful. Wow, and this is one of your,
again,
comes from your wardrobe?
Yes. This is just a design that I made for me years ago. I used these slip stitches on a sweater, and you can also use it in garter stitch. It doesn't show that well, but you have this little shadow, and you can use it for borders, I think, very well.
It's been utterly fascinating to have you.
Thank you very much. It has been my pleasure, really. Thank you again, Andrea and Madeline.
We have learned so much. I'm sure the viewers are feeling just as thrilled as I am. So It's been a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's say goodbye to the viewers. Bye.
Bye.